And then you consider, especially in our age now, all of the stress that people grapple with. More than any other time in the history of the world, today, people struggle with stress. People are all stressed out. Let me read there's some scientific data that I think is worthy of sharing with you. A Cornell University study of working couples confirms the detrimental effects that work-related stress has on families. Married couples with children burdened by long hours of paid work report the lowest quality of life among working couples. Additionally, catch this, 43% of all adults suffer adverse health effects from stress. I wish I could say I was totally immune. And 75% to 90% of all physician office visits are attributed, did you catch that? 75 to 90% of all physician office visits are attributed to stress-related ailments or complaints, according to the American Psychological Association. Stress is linked to the 6 leading causes of death in the United States. Stress is related to heart disease, cancer, lung ailments, accidents, cirrhosis of the liver, suicide, the pharmacy. So many of the drugs that are sold over the counter, everything from sleeping pills to antacids, are related to stress. And I wonder if there's a connection between man forgetting that God said, rest, and to enjoy the rest that He has told us to enjoy in the Sabbath time. Every Sabbath day is not only a time for us to let the pressure of the stress go away, just to lay your burdens down. Jesus says, come to me. I'll help you with your burdens. I'll give you rest. The Sabbath is a renewing of that relationship every week. It's also a memorial of creation. You see, every time you remember the Sabbath day, you remember that in 6 days God created. It is a constant memorial that God is our Creator. You can also find that in Ezekiel. It tells us that He gave us the Sabbath day as a sign of redemption. Not only it reminds us that He is our Creator, that He made us, it reminds us that He redeemed us. For instance, you can look in Exodus chapter 31, verse 13. Verily my Sabbaths you shall keep, for it shall be a sign between me and you throughout your generations, that you might know that I am the Lord that does sanctify you. And a moment ago I cited Ezekiel. It's chapter 20, verse 20. Hallow my Sabbaths, and they shall be a sign between me and you, that you might know that I am the Lord your God. Did it stop being a sign that He is our Redeemer and our Creator at some point? Or is that a perpetual sign? That's why God told us in the commandment, remember to keep the Sabbath day. To keep it what? To keep it holy. Why would God make such a big deal about the Sabbath? Because you and I live in something called time. If you have no more time, that's bad news. Isn't that right? We live in time. And the Sabbath is a memorial that God gives us life, that He redeems us, that relationships are built in time. The devil hates it. Because as we spend time with God, we get to know God. As we get to know Him, we love Him. As we get to know Him better, we love Him better. And if you love Him, then you obey Him. You can't obey Him if you don't know Him and you don't love Him. Does that make sense? So the devil hates that. Because this is where people find the power to live the Christian life. It's in the relationship with Jesus. And the Sabbath is all about that relationship, that love, that time, that quality time with God. It is not a Jewish law. Now, my mother was Jewish. Grew up understanding a lot about the religion. But one thing that's real clear to me is the Bible teaches that the Sabbath is for everybody. What did Jesus say? Mark chapter 2, verse 27. The Sabbath was made for man. That would have been an easy place to say the Sabbath is made for Jews or for Hebrews or Israelites. He doesn't say that. He says the Sabbath was made for man. And you know what else? He's tracing it back to the Garden of Eden, when after God made man on the 6th day, then He made time for man with God. The very next thing He made was the Sabbath. Every man needs it. Everybody in the world is related to Adam. And if you're not related to Adam, I'd like to talk to you later. Need to have your DNA checked. You know what else God made for man? Woman. God said it's not good that man should be alone, so He made a woman. So here's the question. Do we still need women? Do we still need the Sabbath? I always get extra votes when I do it that way. Let's read this verse, Isaiah 56, verse 6. The Sabbath's not just for one race. Listen to this. Also the sons of the stranger that join themselves to the Lord to serve Him. These are strangers, aliens, non-Jews. To love the name of the Lord, to be His servants, everyone that keeps the Sabbath from polluting it and takes hold of my covenant. He's not even talking about the general Sabbath days. He says the Sabbath. Even them I will bring to my holy mountain and make them joyful in my house of prayer. It's for everybody. In the early days of the church, when people converted to Christianity, they embraced the Sabbath along with the other principles of the Bible. It's a time for corporate worship. We need that. We need to come together to fellowship, to edify and build each other up. And the Bible tells us in Exodus chapter 23 that the Sabbath is a holy convocation. That word convocation means, it's like where you get the word convention. It means an assembly, a convening, a coming together. And yet sometimes I meet people, even Sabbath keepers. And by the way, Seventh-day Adventists, we don't have a patent on the Sabbath truth. Many different churches out there today that have learned the Sabbath truth. Matter of fact, I got a call, 2-3 weeks ago, Bonnie, from a pastor. I won't say his name. I don't want to put him on the spot. Lives in Austin, Texas, Pentecostal Church of God pastor, studying our material, watching the programs, accepted the Sabbath truth, presented it to his church. The majority of his church accepted it. They said it's in the Bible. Amen. This is a truth that's spreading everywhere. I mean, we don't have a patent on this. And so it does matter. It is important. It's one of the 10 Commandments. It says here in, of course, Exodus chapter 20, verses 8 and on, to remember the Sabbath day, to keep it holy. You notice God didn't say, remember the Sabbath day and start keeping it holy. He said, keep it holy. That means it is holy. He's asking us to keep what He has made holy, holy. Let me illustrate. If you come to my home and I say, I live in a cold climate and it's winter, and I say, could you just watch the house for a few minutes? Got to run to the store. Can you keep the fire going? No problem, Doug. I say, there's the wood box. Can you keep the fire going? No problem. So I leave, and you think, well, I better check the fire. And you go over and you open up the stove. There's no fire. It's just cold ashes. And you're thinking to yourself, why did Doug say keep the fire going if there's no fire? The very fact that I say keep the fire going implies there is a fire. You just keep it going. God is saying the Sabbath is holy. It did not start being holy with Moses. Some people think that God dreamed it up for the children of Israel at Mount Sinai. They just don't know their Bibles very well. It goes all the way back to Adam. And proof of that would be, if you go to Exodus chapter 16, when the Lord brought the children of Israel out of Egypt before they ever got to Mount Sinai, it says Moses said to them, remember they rained the bread down from heaven? Moses said to them, eat today what they've gathered, for today is the Sabbath to the Lord. Today you will not find it in the field. They would go out 5 days a week. They'd gather manna. On the 6th day, they'd gather twice as much because there would be no manna on the Sabbath day. Yet on the Sabbath day, some still went out looking for manna. And God said, how long will you refuse to keep my commandments? Now notice you find the manna story in Exodus 16. You don't get to Mount Sinai until Exodus 20. God was saying the Sabbath is one of my laws before they ever got to Mount Sinai. It goes all the way back to Adam and Eve. We all need rest. That's not just a Jewish need. That's absurd for people to say that this is a Jewish law. What, did God get it wrong at creation? He had to change it later? It was part of His perfect plan. What about the New Testament would mean there was something wrong with the day? Which brings me to my next question. Which day of the week is the Sabbath? I've already told you, but let's read it one more time. It says, Genesis chapter 2, on the, say it with me, 7th day, God ended His work which He had done. He rested on the 7th day from all His work which He had done. And then God blessed the 7th day and sanctified it, because in it He had rested from all His work which God created and He had done. First time in the Bible any number is mentioned 3 times as in connection with the Sabbath. It says the 7th day, the 7th day, the 7th day. Now, if you've got caveman